Welcome to the WACO Experience, an American story.
We, the people.
With your host, D. Scott Smith.
In order to form a more perfect union.
Interviews with leaders in business, government, and nonprofit organizations.
Promote the general welfare.
Jobs, products and services, and infrastructure for strong communities. Secure
the blessings of liberty.
The WACO Experience is an American story, a story of communities across America. It is your story.
And those men, they had a candle between them in the house to try to stay warm, but while they were sleeping, the candle actually tipped over and it burned the house down with those two men inside of it, and they both died. There's got to be something better than this for our neighbors experiencing homelessness.
Affordable housing is an issue in every community. Today on the WACO Experience, an American story, we hear from Jonah Fox of Mission WACO about a new housing development. Economic opportunities abound in the greater WACO community, and not all citizens benefit. The poverty rate is nearly double the Texas average. Citizens have come together to turn Creekside Community Village from a vision to a reality. I'm your host, D. Scott Smith. Each week I bring you stories from leaders in business, government, and nonprofit organizations. You can learn more about this program, our sponsors, and the podcast version of this show by going to our website, thewacoexperience.com. This program is made possible by sponsors. Quality Cabinets. Your home is an extension of your personality. Smooth, clean, and elegant. Quality Cabinets is the perfect choice for the modern aesthetic. Visit the Design Center at 720 New Dallas Highway in Waco. Quality Cabinets are available for delivery when you are ready. Call 254-744-0938 and visit the website qualitycabinetstx.com. Comic Fest Waco. Syntax Teen Book Fest and Comic Fest Waco join forces Saturday, February 28th in support of literacy. Over 20 young adult authors come to ignite the imaginations of teen readers. There will be author panels sharing their insights and stories, offering a glimpse into their creative worlds. Experience a day filled with literary magic. Learn more online at litwaco.org. Presentgifting.com. Imagine never forgetting an event for those important people in your lives. Because relationships are important and moments matter, Present Gifting is a free service to send you gentle reminders of birthdays, anniversaries, holidays, and more. Register today at presentgifting.com. Heart of Texas TV Indoor Billboards. My friend JB James Battle, former helicopter pilot for the U.S. Army, and his team at Hot TV amplify your brand where it matters most. Be seen where your customers eat, work, shop, and play. Learn more on the web at hotdigitaltv.com. Military Creator Con, April 16th to 18 in Arlington. Military Creator Con is a movement that unites military-connected visionaries across art, media, and entrepreneurship. A multi-day forum where service members, veterans, families, and supporters discover new tools, share expertise, and celebrate their collective creativity. Register today and use the code SCOTT10 to receive a discount at militarycreatorcon.com. D. Scott here at the Baylor Club. Beautiful day. I am with Jonah Fox from Mission WACO. We're going to be talking about the Creekside development that's in process, getting ready to have residents move into it. Jonah, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Glad to have you here.
This is probably one of my favorite locations I've ever recorded a podcast. I mean, we're here overlooking the Brazos. I'm sipping on a Dr. Pepper. It's a great day.
It's a very WACO moment, isn't it?
Absolutely. True WACO moment.
Right here in McLean Stadium, overlooking the river, overlooking campus. It's that perfect time of year. You can sleep at night.
Oh yeah. Windows open even,
Windows open. You can go for a nice walk in the afternoon and not be running from shade to shade.
Yep. That's great.
Life is good. Let's get right into what's going on right now with Mission WACO. A lot of people are familiar with it.
Yeah.
but maybe not the development that's going on. So let's get an overview of Mission Waco and Creekside.
Yeah, definitely. So Mission Waco, many people kind of familiar with Waco are familiar with the Mission Waco story because we're such, I think, an essential organization within the community. But Mission Waco is an organization that's about 35 years old. It was founded by our founders, Jimmy and Janet Dorrell, who are now in an emeritus capacity, enjoying their retirement. And basically, they sought many years ago to love and serve their neighbors well. And so they bought a home in Northeast Waco for $12,000. It was like a 3,000 square foot home with, 5 or 6 bedrooms, a couple bathrooms. And they moved into a neighborhood that at the time was experiencing a lot of challenges, a lot of issues around gang violence and prostitution, poverty happening in that neighborhood. And they chose to move in and to love and serve that neighborhood well. And so that looked like starting by building a basketball court in their backyard for kiddos in the neighborhood to come and just have a place to play basketball. And Mission Waco evolved literally from a half-court basketball court to what we are today, which is an organization with over 20 programs. And we've been walking alongside folks experiencing poverty and homelessness in Waco for about 35 years. And really, the way that we talk about it, many of our programs were developed out of Jimmy and Janet and others that came alongside them who saw a need, that our neighbors had a need, and they built a program to address those needs, and then ultimately grew it and would hand it off. And okay, somebody should have a job to run this. And that's truly organically how our organization came to be. Today, like I said, we have about 20 programs, 75 staff on board, and are doing a lot to engage and serve the city. And Creekside Community Village is the newest kind of innovative program of Mission Waco. So at a high level, the intention of Creekside is to be a permanent supportive housing community for men and women exiting homelessness in McLennan County. At completion, we'll have 350 homes on our property in our neighborhood for people who have exited homelessness to have a permanent place to live and to reside. Everybody who lives at Creekside pays rent. They must have an income. They pay rent to live in our community, and then other rules are, you have to be a good neighbor and you have to obey the law. But pay your rent, be a good neighbor, obey the law. That's really kind of the big three when it comes to Creekside.
And the website is missionwaco.org.
Yep, missionwaco.org, or you can jump straight to Creekside with creeksidewaco.org.
Oh.
Yep.
Okay,
Either
so
one.
creeksidewaco.org. So you've got a website specifically for that.
Specifically for Creekside, yeah.
That's a good deal. We went out to part of the open house that was run. It's a cold day.
Is our Christmas at Creekside Day, and we did have great Christmas time weather. It was very, very cold. Yeah.
It was, but it was a great event, very well attended.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just say, one of the things that impressed me the most on that day was the board that had people who donated.
Yeah.
Businesses and individuals.
Absolutely. What's, kind of ironic, we could maybe get into it a bit later, but there are folks who might be naysayers who are less than excited about the idea of what we're doing for whatever preconceived notion they may have. One of them, oftentimes people say like, oh, what a bad use of tax dollars. And I kind of laugh and I say, tax dollars? Where are they at? I don't really see them, because we are over 90% funded by individuals, churches, and donors who stepped up to this point to help us raise about $12 million to develop thus far what we've been able to do. So yeah, so many individuals, foundations, churches, businesses, organizations in Waco have caught the vision of what's happening at Creekside and said, how could we not be a part of this? So yeah, I agree.
That was really fun to be able to see that board, recognize a lot of names, churches, businesses, individuals that are coming together to make this happen. Mm-hmm. Let's go back to the origin of this.
Yeah.
How did that all come about?
I would say for the story of Creekside, kind of it's not a legend, but a theme, a motif of our community. It really relates to, our founder, Jimmy Dorrell, who is also the pastor at Church Under the Bridge here in Waco. And years ago, he had some men come to church. They came to Sunday school, Church on the Bridge, attended church, and then they left, and they were experiencing homelessness. And they went and they left that day, and they sought shelter in an abandoned home. It was a freezing February day, like what we had recently, just a couple weeks ago. At the time of recording, we had some really bad weather, and it was similar on those days. And those men, they had a candle between them in the house to try to stay warm, but while they were sleeping, the candle actually tipped over, and it burned the house down with those two men inside of it, and they both died. And that became just a moment for Jimmy and for our leaders at Church on the Bridge at Mission Waco to say, like, there's got to be something better than this for our neighbors experiencing homelessness. Waco, in terms of the numbers of people experiencing homelessness, has fluctuated over the years. I mean, 15, 20 years ago, it was probably up in around the 600 mark of individual adults experiencing homelessness that was tracked. And so that, you could put a 20% variance of that, probably higher, maybe up to 1,000 even at that time. Our official number right now is around 250. We say the actual number is probably like 350, 400. So we've done a little better, but individual adult homelessness in Waco continues to be a problem. And so our leaders at Mission Waco years ago came together and said, there's probably a role for us to play in the ending of homelessness in Waco, and began looking for models. And so our leaders discovered a Community First Village in Austin, Texas, just right down the road from us, which is a community in which they have developed. It's around 500 homes for people who've exited homelessness there. And they're doing about a 2,000 home expansion right now. So I think they're kind of becoming a city more so than a village. But their intention there is to build a genuine sense of community and belonging for men and women who have exited homelessness to have a permanent place to live. And they've been extremely successful with it. And so we said, what if we put our own Waco flavor on this and took a shot at doing something similar? And so that's really where kind of the dream and the vision developed to where we are today.
So housing is always an issue in every community. Affordable housing is an issue. Different groups like Habitat address it in a specific way. How is Creekside addressing this issue? Yeah. Because you mentioned that people have to have a job. They do pay rent, but also a lot of money has been raised to build this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a great question. So like you said, affordable housing in every community is absolutely a challenge. I recently put a post in a Facebook group of real estate investors. It's kind of an interest of mine, and just about one of the structures we're building. And hey, here's what we built it for. Here's an idea for other people if you want to do something similar. And it had so much engagement. People are, how are you doing this? What are you doing? This is amazing. Let me see the plans. And I kind of got overwhelmed. I was like, oh, I got to take a step back, because every community needs this and needs work done around housing. So in Waco right now, I would say the cheapest one-bedroom place that you can find to rent is probably about $700 a month for an apartment to secure a place that you'd have your name on a lease. Typically, you have to bring home 3 times that monthly rent. So for $700, you have to bring home $2,100. And many folks that we serve, that we're engaged with, that receive Social Security disability as their primary income related to a disease, an injury, mental illness that they have that prevents them from having a traditional workspace type job. So if you make $967 a month, that apartment rents for $700. You have to make 3 times the rent. You're a single individual. What do? I have a friend named James who's going to live at Creekside, who that was his situation. And he chose to live under the 17th Street Bridge here in Waco. He gets a motel room a couple nights a month when it gets really cold and things like that. But for the most part, he's underneath the bridge because he couldn't go find a place. And so that's really the people that Creekside is going to be serving. Everyone has an income in some sense. It's probably right now, it's about half and half of our folks, maybe 60-40 are recipients of Social Security disability. Another, maybe about 40% are working in the traditional marketplace and do have a traditional sense of employment. But many of our folks are they're just poor, disabled individuals in our community in which the cost of living has drastically increased, but the supplemental income available to them just has not. And so it's created a real problem. And so Creekside plays a role of really disrupting that space, where through donor dollars, we will build permanent housing that people will pay rent for to live in and be able to live there for the rest of their lives at a rent rate that they could afford. So our units at Creekside, they will rent for right now between $294 and $575 a month. It's kind of the range based on square footage and some amenities and that kind of thing. But for somebody, who's bringing home $731 a month SSDI, they could, rent a place for $294 and have some margin and be safe and secure and successful in that space for as long as they choose to be.
And so you mentioned this is modeled after some other communities. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about what does Creekside look like when it's complete?
Yeah. So at completion, Creekside, we will have 350 homes on our property. I think we will feel very similar in a lot of ways to another housing development, but our houses are just a bit smaller. So our homes at Creekside are tiny homes. So they average around 200 square feet, some a little bigger, some a little smaller. And each neighborhood at Creekside is a cluster of about 35 to 40 homes that each have a front porch, all the porches are covered. They look toward each other, that sort of thing. We have a main road that kind of carries you through our property, and our neighborhoods are developed along that road. Each neighborhood at Creekside has what's called a community wash house and a kitchen. And so at Creekside, the majority of our homes are not plumbed. They themselves do not have plumbing to them, but we use a community wash house model. So we centralize the plumbing, which decreases construction costs. It also helps with property management and maintenance, that all of that type of thing is centralized, so we can keep a really good tabs on how all of our kind of facilities are doing. And then it also draws our neighbors into community, that for many experiencing homelessness, self-isolation or to choose to isolate is a temptation. And so this is an invitation to community. When you have to throw the towel over your shoulder and take a short walk to the showers, you're going to bump into somebody and say, "Hey, Scott, how's it going?" And eventually our hope is that relationships are built in that model. So the wash house kind of centralized model kind of gets some people. A lot of people have questions about it, or reservations. And what's interesting is it's middle-class people who really have a problem with it, who really can't understand or get around it, or almost feel like it's unethical. But I take one of our neighbors experiencing homelessness out to our site, and I walk them around and I show them kind of the bathroom situation, and they all go, "Okay, house is there, bathroom's there, sounds good. Where do I sign?" Is really how it's gone, because in terms of the alternative for our neighbors now, it's not a pretty picture for many of them. And so that's kind of the structure of the community. Each neighborhood has a community kitchen as well. That's a central point for folks to come together to prepare meals, either for themselves or in small groups. The community kitchen is also a space for church groups, businesses, that sort of thing, to come into the community together to maybe provide a meal for the neighborhood and get engaged and involved in that way. And so the community kitchens serve as kind of a central kind of lifeblood point of the neighborhood, if that makes sense.
So today on the WACO Experience, an American Story, Jonah Fox from Mission WACO, missionwaco.org, and we're talking about the new development Creekside, which creeksidewaco.org. People can go and learn more about that. We mentioned that there was a lot of individuals, businesses, churches that have contributed to this project. But I imagine there's more need yet that people can be involved in, either financially or through service. Let's talk about some of the opportunities that people have to be involved.
Absolutely. So yes, as we said, to this point, we're about a $12 million development, and so many people have come on board to help us make that happen. We now, our first neighborhood at Creekside is officially fully funded, which is something that we were able to celebrate right around the end of 2025. And now we've set our sights on what's called our Welcome Home Center at Creekside. So the Welcome Home Center is an 8,000 square foot community center building, and it's truly like the living room of the home for us. That every good true home needs a living room, and the Welcome Home Center is ours. It's where we gather, we grow in community, and we build belonging in that space. And so we've kind of set our goal and our vision on that. So that's a $2.5 million build in the Welcome Home Center that will help us offer lots of program space, large group gathering space, that sort of thing. And we raised about $500,000 for it. And then we do have a generous anonymous donor who's come forward with a $750,000 match gift. So every dollar given toward the Welcome Home Center right now is doubled in helping us realize that goal. And so we do have a really aggressive goal of seeing how far could we get this spring on seeing those funds raised so that we could break ground on the Welcome Home Center in 2026 and it really realize that space for our community. And the Welcome Home Center, what's important is it's not just a space for Mission Waco or for Creekside, but really it's a vision of having another large group gathering space downtown that organizations, churches, people groups could use maybe even for free, a place to gather and have events and that sort of thing. So that's our hope for that space. So financially, that would be our ask right now, to jump in that way. In terms of volunteering at Creekside and really engaging, kind of what we need in terms of volunteers is folks who are willing to jump in and build relationships, who don't feel like they need to come in as a hero and fix anybody, Our neighbors are all on a journey of healing themselves, and a lot of them are doing pretty good, and they have great supports around them. What they need are friends and people who come to them with a sense of genuine friendship and hospitality, and curiosity about their lives, and a willingness to share their own lives with them. And so one of the probably the lowest barrier of entry ways to do that would be to come and do a community meal in our neighborhood. So in the community kitchen, where you can come with, again, a church group, maybe some friends, a business group, and cook burgers for everybody in the neighborhood on a Thursday night. And then you go out and you say, hey, we're having burgers. Anybody who wants to come have one, come on down, we're grilling, and we'll share a burger and get to know each other a little bit. And that's this, we all got to eat. And it's a really simple way to begin to build relationships and show up consistently in that way. We have intentions at Creekside at doing, things like developing a dignified income program where our neighbors who live at Creekside can have the opportunity to earn some supplemental income. And so an opportunity might be to jump in with a neighbor who they're contracted to maybe clean the bathrooms. Every Tuesday from 2 to 4, they clean the bathrooms. Well, you could come as a volunteer and just be a supportive coworker alongside that person. And we're going to volunteer, and I'm going to go to Sue's house. I'm going to knock on the door and say, hey, Sue, we're cleaning the bathrooms today. Are you down? Let's go. Let's make it happen. And you're just there talking and maybe singing and hanging out and helping clean alongside that neighbor who maybe just needs a little reminder, needs a little additional support, maybe needs a friend to do it alongside. And that's a great way to get involved as well. And then really there's all sorts of opportunities to use kind of professional skills and interests. Like for you, Scott, you're a podcast, a show guy. Of come out and help us do a podcast, or maybe help a neighbor start their own podcast, right? Or help if you're a healthcare worker, come out alongside some of our healthcare teams and volunteer in that capacity. So it's really, I tell people the opportunities are endless. We're going to have to begin creating some volunteer roles and that sort of thing. But what we're looking for truly is people with a willingness to share life alongside our neighbors, and to allow them to kind of enter into their own lives as well, as they're journeying with them. So, yeah.
And Jonah, what was your path into Mission Waco?
It was long and windy, but it's good. So I grew up here in Waco. I'm a Waco kid. The Dr. Pepper runs literally in my veins, which is, I guess where that addiction comes from, I guess. But my parents are still here in Waco, but I went to the University of Mary Hardin-Baylor, and I met my wife there, and started out in ministry thinking I'd be a student pastor. And I served as a student pastor in Temple, and then I transitioned to a role leading local global missions in a church there in Temple. And it was such a great time. So formative, made a lot of mistakes along the way, but had great just mentors and lead pastors in my life who just walked alongside me and pointed me in the right direction. And came to at the end of that season, it was kind of this this moment of, who am I outside of being a pastor at this church, was really a question that held my mind. I came on staff when I was 19 years old and had always been there. That's the only thing I'd ever done. And so I needed to take a step away and say, like, who am I outside of this? So I joined a company here in Waco called Yellow Rose Painting, and got to do painting sales with Yellow Rose, and help kind of grow and scale some things, and built a lot of good friendships and relationships, a passion kind of for the construction design space. While I was a pastor and at Yellow Rose, I've been involved in flipping homes and rental properties as well. And so I've done a number of those. And just, I love the construction side of things. I love also the ministry people side of things. And so I was just praying that God would create an opportunity for me to do both of that at the same time, which is it's a weird thing, to kind of bridge those two worlds. But God just, I think, kind of smiled and said, yeah, I have a role for you. And so getting the opportunity to lead at Creekside was really kind of a combination of all the things I genuinely love and care about. As a pastor in Temple, had a really close relationship and still do with an organization called Feed My Sheep there in Temple that serves people experiencing homelessness and extreme poverty. And Jeff Siegel, who's the director there at Feed My Sheep, I say he's like my Obi-Wan Kenobi, like he's my mentor and speaks to me in spiritual ways, and he's great. So it's really shaped a lot of how I approach a lot of that. But yeah, that's kind of the nickel tour of how I landed here where I'm at. I remember coming to the first interview for this role with Mission Waco and really just praying and saying, God, this is genuinely what I feel I want, and that this is an invitation. And if it is the same for you, if you would just make it clear. And I think from the initial conversation with the leaders here at Mission Waco, it was incredibly clear that that this was the right fit, and there was a several round interview process. And I wouldn't say it's not pride. It wasn't hubris, but I think sometimes you feel a sense of connection that there's no denying it. And that's truly how it was. So I consider it an absolute privilege to be in the seat where I'm at now. Many days are hard and frustrating. I tell people all the time, construction is emotional. For people who haven't ever worked in construction, you may not understand that. For people who do, you would understand. It's an emotional, frustrating thing. And walking alongside people experiencing and exiting homelessness is a frustrating, emotional thing. And so we just get to put all of that in a bottle and shake it up, and it's a really good time. But I love it. I truly think I'm doing what I am supposed to be doing with my life.
Let's talk about what's coming up.
Yeah.
So Creekside is now active?
Yeah. So definitely active.
There.
So, we had an initial target of welcoming our first phase of neighbors in January of 2026. And with weather, we had torrential rains last summer, lots of weather delays, challenges. And so that's been pushed to the end of the first quarter. We believe we have a very hard date of somewhere between about March 15 and April 1 is when our first phase of neighbors will be moving in. So that's 35 folks who'll be moving into the community, all of our units at this time essentially are spoken for. And those folks, they're being case managed right now. We have regular touch points with them. They're truly just waiting to receive keys to come home. And so we right now, one of the things we're working on is planning what our move-in days look like of, how do we do this and that? And, but we had a gathering on Saturday with all of our neighbors, our folks who are about to move in. At Creekside, we call them neighbors. And we got them all in the room. It was for the first time. Everybody's in the room and said, I know it's frustrating. I know you're really ready to come home. But if you'll hang with me, there will be a day soon when we come and we pick you up right outside this building and we drive and we go home. And just kind of everybody in the room just kind of shook their head and said, we understand. And they trust that we're working hard to get those doors open. We also, on Saturday, we got to let our neighbors go shopping. And so we, through donations and that sort of thing, we set up a store in one of our facilities and let our neighbors go through and they got to pick their items for their home. And so we're furnishing like furniture, hard furniture is going to be in all the homes, but they picked like their bedspread and the lamp and the trash can and all those things. All those soft items, they got to pick their own of what they wanted, what color, what type of item, that sort of thing. That's all been boxed up. It'll be stored and then it'll be staged before they move in. And so that's kind of the stuff that's happening, in the moment. Every day on our site is like an anthill. There's 100 people or more working on different things to prepare homes for the folks who will arrive soon. I'm really looking forward to the day soon, hopefully, where we're done building for a little bit, where we kind of have a pause and we can just kind of settle in to our home and take a breath and begin to grow in relationship with each other. So at Creekside, we don't have case managers because we don't have compulsory services. So our neighbors aren't required to participate in any sort of program at Creekside. But we do have what's called neighbor service coordinators. And we did just hire our first neighbor service coordinator. And so they'll get rolling here soon. And their primary kind of goal and objective is to assist our neighbors in maintaining their house status by leveraging resources already available to them. So just somebody to navigate and to coach and encourage, to point, to help kind of cut red tape and that kind of thing. And so excited to have that person coming on board soon. So yeah, lots happening, but hopeful that soon we'll just take a breath and we'll settle in and we'll come home.
The WACO Experience, An American Story, is a production of D. Scott Smith Company, all rights reserved. Thank you for listening.